Hey friends, it's Carrie. Welcome back to my channel. Today I'm going to talk about the book I read called Talking to Strangers, What We Should Know About the People We Don't Know by Malcolm Gladwell. And I listened to this as an audiobook, and I really think that if you check this book out, you should listen to it as an audiobook as well, because the author is actually a podcaster, and the format of the audiobook is set up that way as well. Essentially, this book talks about how ill-equipped we are to talk to strangers and read strangers and judge them, and how this can have really profound consequences on our society and also our day-to-day life. I think some of the best books are those that make you think, not necessarily those that think for you, and I think this book is one of those types of books. While I don't necessarily agree with all of the things that are in this book, I definitely would say that any book right now that would cause us to kind of pause and give each other a little bit more respect and understanding is definitely a good thing, and I think that this book would accomplish that. I can't really say that I would accept a lot of the generalizations in this book as fact, because the author does use a lot of anecdotal information, and he, specifically uses some isolated cases, and so I don't necessarily think, he utilizes a large amount of data or anything to back up his claims, but I would say it's thought-provoking, it's very interesting, and it is a book that will give you pause, it will make you think. And so I definitely enjoyed it. I liked the fact that the book included some historical cases, and it also included some contemporary cases. So one of the historical cases that was included was the appeasement of Adolf Hitler. It also included a spy that Fidel Castro had in the CIA. It included the Amanda Knox murder trial, the Bernie Madoff scandal, and also the Sandra Bland police incident. So why did Neville Chamberlain proclaim that he had achieved peace in our time with Adolf Hitler when Winston Churchill knew that Adolf Hitler could not be trusted, and Winston Churchill had never actually met Adolf Hitler, but Neville Chamberlain had met Adolf Hitler and had shaken hands with Adolf Hitler? The reason that this author postulates that Neville Chamberlain had it so wrong is that Neville Chamberlain, like everyone else in the world, is pre-programmed and hardwired a certain way. The author states that every human being defaults to truth. We want to believe that people are being truthful, and we always expect to see something in someone's face. And when someone appears to be trustworthy or appears to be remorseful or sad or angry, we tend to trust that. One of the scenarios that the author brought up is that robots are better at predicting which suspects should be released on bond than human judges, because they are better at predicting which suspects will actually commit criminal acts while they are awaiting trial. And so the author doesn't necessarily see the value in seeing the person's face, because if we're automatically pre-programmed to default to truth and we're kind of ill-equipped to spot the liars, maybe there's not a lot of value in seeing the person's face. We mistakenly believe that people always reveal who they are, and this is just not the case. Also, when people are mismatched, we really don't know what to do with that information. When a person appears guilty because they are nervous and sweaty and red-faced and fidgety, we don't really know what to do with that information. it just doesn't feel right. So, like, for example, with the Amanda Knox case, because her actions and her emotions were kind of mismatched for the situation, she was doing yoga poses and she wasn't crying when her roommate was murdered. That didn't match what most people feel is the appropriate emotional response. So that kind of marked her for being a suspect. So unfortunately, even though the physical evidence and the DNA did not say she was guilty, from the outset, she was going to be a suspect, even though the physical evidence didn't really match that. Simply because she was an immature, quirky foreigner, she did 4 years in prison. The author also had an interesting discussion about what's called the coupling phenomena, which is where you take a person's surroundings, so a particular place and their condition, into context, which is very interesting, particularly when it comes to issues like suicide. So looking at proximity to bridges and access to certain modes of committing the act. That was extremely interesting. I'm not very sure how it tied into everything else that the author was talking about, but it was definitely an interesting, psychological perspective, and people and their attitudes definitely need to be taken into context. And of course, when you're trying to understand how to communicate with strangers, mental health is definitely one of the things that should be considered. And I'm assuming that's why the author included that coupling part into the discussion. I'm not one to discount an entire book because of one particular section or one particular topic, but I will warn you that the author does include the Sandusky case, and also he includes a section about a campus sexual assault, which is pretty graphic and detailed in its description. I'm not sure why that case was chosen. I'm glad the author allowed the victim's impact statement to have the last word on that particular part, because I wasn't very sure where he was going with that part of the book, and it honestly made me a little bit uncomfortable and a little bit nervous. So I did want to warn you about that. If that's a topic that you're particularly uncomfortable with, you may want to skip that part of the book. The audiobook is set up like a podcast, so it is structured in that manner. So it does include interviews with witnesses and experts, and also reenactments of court transcripts and historical clips as well. I think we should all pretty much know by now that people are complex individuals, and I think that's kind of the point of the book overall. I think all of it boils down to the fact that people just don't know how to talk anymore, and there's a lack of respect and a lack of civility, and I think that in general there should be a little bit more of that. And there were some very interesting tidbits in this book about trying to detect liars. I don't know that there is a way to be better at that according to this book. It seems like we're all kind of bad at that. So if you're a good liar, you're just a good liar. So good liars are confident, and some people are just generally nervous, and so if someone is generally nervous and they fidget and they sweat and they appear like they're lying, we just assume that they're lying. But those people are just nervous people. Don't assume the worst of them. That's something else that this book talks about. So, interesting book. It was an interesting read. I've had a couple of reads this week that I had to DNF. I never DNF books, but I had 2 books this week that I just DNF'd. They were just, I don't even want to talk about them because it was very disappointing. One I was really looking forward to, it was another nonfiction, and I got about halfway through, I was slogging through it, and a friend of mine is like, why do you try to slug through those? Just stop. Just quit. And then another one, I'm not even going to mention what book it is, but Summer at Cozy Reading with Quaker Cats, she also rated this book a 1. I think she's going to reread it, but I've been trying to read it as an audiobook, and I don't know. I'm thinking I'm gonna DNF it. I can't get into it. So I won Summer's book giveaway, which I'm really excited about because that's a Russian historical fiction. So I'm really excited about that one. So I'm hoping I will have some good, solid historical fiction or thriller reads coming up. I don't know what I'm going to pick up next, but after my 2 DNFs, I had to film this in front of the Christmas tree because I just needed something to kind of pick me up here, guys. I don't know. I don't know. I never DNF, and then 2 in 1 week. It's been a doozy. So, but talk to me, guys, if anybody else is having a rough reading week. Let me know in the comments, and let me know if you're reading anything great, if there's something I need to pick up. I do have lots of stuff on my, TBR, but it's just sometimes you just struggle with what to read next. And I think maybe just because I've done nonfiction November and I've just been so bogged down in nonfiction, maybe I just need to pick up some fiction and get back into that. I don't know. So thanks for joining me, and I hope you're having a great night.